What's up, team? This is Frank playing the game that seems to be some sort of psychedelic album cover art. This is a quick and dirty review of Thumper. I find these rhythm beat games very difficult to play. I don't think I was born with that part of the brain that can identify beats and musical measures. The music has a Blue Man Crew vibe to it, which means that there's a solid drum beat mixed in with some industrial sounds. Take this part of the game for example. I mean, maybe some of you will instantly see how the beats perfectly match with the cadence and rhythm in the game, but I can't see it, or hear it. But more on this later. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? Thumper is a rhythm game and it reminds me a lot of other games like Audio Surf, those Osu music games, and even Guitar Hero, only in this game beats are known as notes. I opted to play on a gamepad as the game seems designed primarily with these controls in mind. All inputs center around one button. Tap it on the notes, hold it to break through barriers, use it with left or right on the analog stick to get around curves, or press it with up when you hit a note to launch into the air, avoiding spikes and to get these ring thingies. The game has 9 levels which progressively ramp up to a frenetic pace, and a play plus mode for the truly sadistic who like increased speeds and permadeaths. It took me under 5 hours to complete the base game on my first run, but this was strewn over the course of a few days since my thumb kept getting sore while playing. You see, although the game isn't impossible, it's definitely challenging. You either achieve enlightenment allowing you to see through space and time, or get crushed by the brutal chicanes and difficult input combinations. The game does a decent job of introducing new mechanics and relative safety, only to implement them again later on, which helps given that the game relies on swift reaction time and precise inputs. Take these snake things for example. They're first introduced in a boss fight in small numbers, but eventually they come in greater and greater numbers even outside of boss fights. Or take this thing, known as a sentry. It loads up notes with anti-miss technology, causing it to shoot you when you do in fact miss. At first it only loads up a few notes and then it goes away, but eventually it loads up large swaths of levels and appears even during boss battles. This sentry thing really stressed me out. You know you bought into a game's immersion when the mere sight and sound of a sentry approaching causes you to tense up and engage serious mode. The game rarely lets up once you pass the 4th level. There are times when the next beat or obstacle appears almost immediately after completing a checkpoint within a level. At other times the game gives you a brief lull in which you can relax, breathe, and compose yourself for the relentless rapid dash through the psychotropic landscape to come. The visuals in this game are decidedly simple and yet attractive. The stark contrast between the nebulous space surrounding you and the clear linear and geographical designs, obstacles, and bosses provide your eyes with a feast of color and movement. But you'll barely have time to notice them as you're laser focused on what obstacles are placed ahead to kill you. You see, your bug ship thingy can survive one hit. There's no user interface to show you your health, but you can tell if your ship can take a hit by whether or not it has these shiny wings. The wings are like a shield, protecting you from one hit. Getting hit without the wings brings swift death though. You might be asking yourself right now, is that it? So you go around corners, break through barriers, and jump over obstacles as the game speeds up and puts more and varied combinations of these things in your path? And yeah, you're right, but later on as I improved, I began mastering more difficult combinations of inputs. For example, eventually you realize that there are way more rings floating around than you can possibly hit, and some exist even around corners, which I've never been able to hit before. In order to get these rings, I needed to learn how to sustain flight as I went around corners, which requires some precise timing. But this is only useful to increase your score at the end of a level, and personally, I didn't care if my final score looked like my grade school report cards. But I did learn a life-saving technique which, in conjunction with flying around corners, can be very tricky to pull off. By jumping off a note and then slamming down on the next, your bug causes a crazy and satisfying shockwave which kills all these little tentacle thingies that appear on the side of the track. If you slam down with a high enough score multiplier, you will imbue the next note with a visible glow, and if you manage to hit that glowing note, you will get your shielded wings back if you lost them earlier. Of course, this becomes very hard and even too risky to pull off in later levels, but it definitely raised the ceiling of difficulty when I felt that a level became stale or repetitive. Despite the simple controls and your improvements as you play, you will crash and burn often. The game is just too frantic and fast-paced. There are times when you can barely see what's coming next, giving you mere milliseconds to react or die. But at least the game doesn't make you restart the entire level. You restart at relatively frequent checkpoints, so you got that going for you, which is nice. And this is where VR actually helps. Playing on a monitor works well, but in VR I found a distinct advantage which made the levels easier in my opinion. Take this level for example. On the monitor the camera perspective automatically snaps to the orientation of the track. This is clearly done on purpose to increase the challenge as it reduces visibility of future obstacles. However, in VR, I'm free to look ahead and change the perspective at will. This doesn't make the game a breeze by any stretch of the imagination, but it gives you, the player, a better chance to deal with what the game dishes out. And that's it. That's everything you need to know about Thumper. In the end, I found Thumper to be one of the few games that definitely benefits from VR implementation. My computer, which is on the lower end of VR-capable machines, had no trouble running it, and being able to scout ahead on a track is a real boon to the player. I also experienced a couple bouts of goosebumps while playing this game, but this only occurred in VR, and only when the music matched the beats and actions like during this part. But unfortunately, I found this perfect synergy between actions and music to be more rare than I would expect from a game like this. Also, I seem to be immune to artificial movement in VR, but I imagine that this game would probably destroy new VR players or anyone who can't take large doses of speed, jostling, and/or turns. Maybe leave a comment as to whether or not the VR motion messed you up to help warn or give peace of mind to prospective buyers. If you're into fast-paced, twitch reaction, psychedelic music and rhythm-based games, you'll find a lot of satisfaction in Thumper. The game is rather polished, pretty, and definitely challenging, especially if you're going for those high scores. There were a couple of times where the game surprised me, as when the boss fights required a series of inputs that the game had not explicitly taught me yet, which I figured out by virtue of the game mechanics I had been using the entire game. These moments of insight were a pleasant surprise, but this only happened once or twice for me. If you care little about S ranks or find rhythm and beat games to be repetitive and uninspired, you can definitely pass on this one. Lastly, if you vomited or had an epileptic seizure while watching this video, I'm sorry, and you definitely shouldn't buy this game. And remember, this was a quick and dirty review of Thumper.